Most people think of Dathomir as just Maul's home, a backwater swamp in the Outer Rim, a footnote in Sith lore, a place the galaxy forgets as soon as it's mentioned. But what if I told you that beneath those mist-choked trees, in caves glowing with bioluminescent fungi, there existed a coven of witches who didn't just survive the dark side, they mastered it, bending it into something no Jedi or Sith could ever comprehend. What if I told you these women pulled strings across star systems, shaping wars, manipulating destinies, and leaving their mark on the galaxy's most pivotal moments, all while the rest of the universe dismissed them as savages in the muck? You know their name, if you know it at all, the Nightsisters, and they were never just a cult. They were a force of nature, sharp, unyielding, and terrifyingly capable. The Jedi called them heretics of the Force. The Sith saw them as a curiosity, a sideshow of primitive magic. But both were wrong. The Nightsisters didn't wield the Force like either order. They didn't cling to the Sith's rage or the Jedi's denial of emotion. They merged the dark side with Dathomir's primal, living energy. The same energy that gave life to rancors, that made the swamp itself feel alive with intent. They called it magic, and it was raw, visceral, and unapologetically feminine. A Nightsister could summon a storm with a whisper, heal a mortal wound with a potion brewed from swamp moss and dragon's blood, or curse a foe to be hunted by their own shadows. They fought with poisoned darts dipped in venom that numbed the Force, with blades carved from rancor bone that hummed with dark energy, and with tactics that turned the jungle into a death trap for anyone foolish enough to invade. This wasn't chaos, it was strategy, discipline. A matriarchy built on power, loyalty, and the unshakable belief that Dathomir and its daughters deserved to rule the shadows. And rule they did. Their reach wasn't just confined to their swamp. It stretched across the galaxy, touching everything from small-scale skirmishes to the Clone Wars themselves. Let's start with the Sith, their most unlikely and most dangerous pawns. Darth Sidious knew of the Nightsisters, of course. He felt their magic in the Force, a cold, thrumming current that didn't fit his neat little game of Jedi versus Sith. He sent Maul back to Dathomir, not just to reclaim his heritage, but to destroy them. But Maul was never a match for the Coven. The Nightsisters didn't fear him, they toyed with him. They showed him visions of his mother, of the boy he'd been before Sidious forged him into a weapon, and in that vulnerability, they planted a seed of doubt that would plague him for years. Maul left Dathomir broken, his mission failed, and Sidious was forced to turn his attention elsewhere, buying the Nightsisters time to expand their influence. Then there's Asajj Ventress. You know her as Dooku's former apprentice, a Sith assassin with a vendetta. But what you might not know is that she was a Nightsister sent to Dooku by Mother Talzin herself, not as a loyal student, but as a spy. Ventress learned Dooku's weaknesses, his plans, his greed, and fed every detail back to Dathomir. She sabotaged Separatist operations from the inside, leaking battle plans to Republic forces when it suited the Coven, eliminating rivals who threatened Dathomir's interests, and even planting ideas in Dooku's head that led him to make catastrophic mistakes. When Dooku finally saw through her charade and tried to kill her, Ventress fled back to her sisters, not as a failure, but as a weapon that had served its purpose. And the Nightsisters didn't just protect her. They armed her. They gave her the tools to hunt Dooku, to make him pay for betraying one of their own. That's the Nightsisters' power. They didn't just use people, they empowered them, turning pawns into weapons that struck when the galaxy least expected it. But their influence didn't stop with the Sith. The Clone Wars were their playground. While Jedi and Separatists clashed in open battle, the Nightsisters were harvesting rare resources from war-torn planets. Kyber shards that amplified their magic, toxic spores that could disable droids, and Force-sensitive children orphaned by the fighting, whom they took back to Dathomir to train as new sisters. They struck deals with Hutt cartels, trading their potions and curses for information and starships. They manipulated senators on Coruscant, planting whispers of doubt about the war effort that slowed Republic legislation. They even turned Separatist droids against their own armies, using magic to override their programming and turned battlefields into slaughterhouses for the CIS. And no one knew. The Republic called the chaos random insurgent attacks. The Separatists blamed Jedi sabotage. No one dared to imagine that a group of witches from a forgotten planet was pulling the strings. Because to admit that would mean admitting that the galaxy's two greatest powers were being outmaneuvered by a force they couldn't understand or control. Even the Jedi, for all their supposed wisdom, were blind to the Nightsisters' game. When a Republic battalion was sent to Dathomir to secure the system during the Clone Wars, the Nightsisters wiped them out in hours. Vines coiled around troopers' throats before they could fire their blasters. Quicksand swallowed tanks whole. Magick turned their own blaster bolts back on them. The few survivors who made it off-world spoke of monsters in the mist, of witchcraft that defied the Force. But the Jedi Council dismissed their stories as trauma-induced delusions. They couldn't accept that a group of Force users outside their order, one that embraced the dark side without succumbing to Sith madness, could defeat their best troops. So they filed the incident away as a local uprising and moved on. That was the Nightsisters' greatest strength: invisibility. They didn't crave fame or glory. They didn't want to rule the galaxy openly. They wanted to control it from the shadows, ensuring that no one ever threatened Dathomir again, because they'd been threatened before. Long before Maul, long before the Clone Wars, the Jedi had come to Dathomir. They'd called the Nightsisters corruptors, abominations, and tried to wipe them out. But the witches fought back, using the swamp as their ally, turning the Jedi's own code against them. The Jedi left bloodied and humiliated, and the Nightsisters learned a brutal lesson. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and the only way to survive was to be the ones holding the power. So they built their coven into a fortress. They trained their daughters to be warriors and strategists. They wove their magic into the very soil of Dathomir, making the planet itself a weapon. And when the galaxy went to war, they didn't pick sides, they picked winners. They made sure that no matter who triumphed, Dathomir would emerge stronger. You might be wondering, if they were so powerful, why did they fade into obscurity? Why don't we hear more about them in the annals of Star Wars history? Because power like theirs doesn't last forever. Not when the galaxy's most ruthless players decide to eliminate the threat. After Ventress's betrayal, Dooku grew paranoid. He feared the Nightsisters' influence, feared that they'd turn on him again, or worse, align with Sidious. So he sent his most loyal general, General Grievous, to Dathomir with a fleet of droids, ordered to erase the coven from existence. It was a slaughter. The Nightsisters fought fiercely, summoning storms, raising the dead to fight as zombies, and tearing through droids with their magic. But Grievous's forces were too many, too relentless. Mother Talzin, the coven's leader, sacrificed herself to save a handful of sisters, using her last breath to curse Dooku and Grievous. By the end of the battle, Dathomir was in ruins, the Nightsisters all but extinct. But here's the thing about the Nightsisters: they don't stay dead easily. Their magic is tied to Dathomir, to the swamp, to the very essence of the dark side. Even after their coven was destroyed, their influence lingered. Maul, broken and adrift, carried their legacy with him. His rage fueled by the loss of his home, his tactics shaped by the witches who once toyed with him. Ventress, the last of the full-fledged Nightsisters, continued to hunt Dooku, carrying their vendetta until her dying day. And rumors persist, rumors that a new generation of Nightsisters has risen from Dathomir's ashes, that they're rebuilding their coven, that they're waiting for the right moment to reemerge and claim what's theirs. Because the galaxy forgot about them. It dismissed Dathomir as a backwater, Maul's forgotten home, a place of monsters and mist. But the Nightsisters never forgot. They never forgive. And power that's hidden isn't power that's gone, it's power that's waiting for the galaxy to grow complacent, waiting for the next war, waiting to pull the strings again. So the next time you hear someone mention Dathomir, don't think of Maul. Think of the witches. Think of the magic. Think of the force that shaped galactic history without anyone noticing. Think of the Nightsisters and wonder if they're still out there, in the shadows, biding their time. Because the galaxy's greatest threats aren't the Sith Lords or the Jedi Masters. They're the ones no one sees. The ones who pull the strings. The ones who turn swamps into fortresses and magic into weapons. The Nightsisters. And they're not done yet. Not by a long shot.